You are listening to Woodland Walks, a podcast for the Woodland Trust, presented by Adam Shaw. We protect and plant trees for people, for wildlife.
Well, welcome to the latest in these lockdown editions of our Woodland Walks podcasts, where rather than running around the country myself, I've been listening to other people's walks and their reflections about the outdoor spaces they visit and which are important to them. Today, we're lucky to be joined by the author Tracy Chevalier, who has shared her daily walk in her local park. Well, Tracy is perhaps best known as the author of the international bestseller Girl with the Pearl Earring, which was turned into a film starring Colin Firth and Scarlett Johansson, but her many novels have taken her readers on journeys to lots of very different places and times. To 16th century France in her first novel Virgin Blue, to late 15th century Belgium in The Lady and the Unicorn, and to 17th century Holland as it does in The Girl with the Pearl Earring. Right now, she is in 21st century North London. She has her walking boots on and a trusty recorder.
I am about to go out on my daily walk into Hampstead Heath, where there are an awful lot of trees that give me solace there right now. So I'm going to take you to some of them. Now, I'm very lucky because Hampstead Heath in North London is right at the end of my street. And it's many, many acres of land to walk around. Most people think of Hampstead Heath, I think, as open spaces. Parliament Hill, where you can see an amazing view of the city and lots of rolling places for picnics. And that's true, there is all that, but there's also a lot of trees and a lot of groves of trees. So the first grove I'm in is right behind Parliament Hill, a relatively open grove, and it's mostly old beeches and oak trees. Probably 100 years old. Very beautiful, and I'm delighted that the leaves are starting to come out. The trees are dressing themselves, and it gives me a lift every time I see these bright, bright green leaves. Before the lockdown, when I used to come for walks in the heath, I admit I normally stayed to the paths, and I think most people did. But I've noticed as the lockdown has continued, people are straying off the paths more and more in order to maintain social distancing. And it's funny because this particular part of the woods I come in, out of the fields and into this kind of valley. There's a hill that goes down to a stream and then goes back up again. The most beautiful trees here. And over the weeks I've noticed that the paths are starting to be made between the trees. People are walking here more, walking slowly, listening, looking. One thing I've also noticed is everybody's paying attention to the birds a lot more. I'm gonna see if I can record some of them. They've all stopped because I'm talking probably, but let me just be quiet for a minute and listen. Do you hear all that? Yeah, they're really going for it. The birds are really taking over, and I love it. I'm standing in a grove of very old beech trees. And beech trees are very easy to tell apart from other trees partly because their bark is really smooth, makes them great climbing trees. Also, when you're in a beech grove, the floor underneath the beeches, nothing grows under it for some reason. And it's very clear and clean looking. These beeches must be 200 years old. I can see probably 30 of them around me. They're so old that the first branches that come out of the trunk are probably 15 to 20 feet off the ground. And I really love beeches because I remember them from my childhood. You can probably hear there are a lot of kids around. And I think that a lot of people's love of trees starts when they're young. For me, it started when I was a kid. I grew up in Washington, D.C. We had a big back garden, and it had a beech tree in it, an easy-to-climb beech tree, but you had to be old enough to reach that bottom branch. And I remember vividly my older brother and sister being able to climb it, and I couldn't because I couldn't quite reach it. And when I was 5 years old, I managed finally to get myself up into the tree. I was so proud of myself, and I was sitting there on these lovely smooth branches, and my father had been away on a trip. He used to be a photographer for the Washington Post. He had been away on a trip, and he came back after 3 weeks away, and my brother and sister scrambled down out of the tree and ran to see him, and I was stuck up there because I had figured out how to get up, but I didn't know how to get down. So that's my memory of beech, and I think that kids are fearless and they're not afraid of climbing things and falling out of them. We adults are a little bit more frightened, but I'm really tempted now to go find a tree to climb in. I might just do that. I'm sitting up in an oak tree. Okay, I'm only about 10 feet off the ground, I admit it, but it's a particularly horizontal oak, which is unusual. Most of the oaks in Hampstead Heath are really massive and gnarly and hard to get up to its branches. But this one has very conveniently grown its branches out so I can sit in it. And I've always loved being above things like this. It's such an unusual perspective. I think that we often see trees as being witnesses, maybe, to us. I certainly feel like that during this period of lockdown. One thing I've noticed is that nature carries on regardless, and I have found that at times almost as if all the blossom out and the leaves coming out are mocking us. And then other times I take it as a great comfort to see the cycles continuing on. Now, most of the trees in Hampstead Heath are native to the UK, so I've been talking about beech, I've been talking about oak, I've seen a lot of birch trees, but there is the odd, unusual tree that's been brought in from elsewhere, so I'm going to take us over to one now. On my way to this special tree, just listen to the birds again. Okay, I found it. I wasn't sure I was going to. I'm standing at the base of a giant redwood. Yes, there's a redwood in Hampstead Heath. It's true most of the trees here are UK natives, but occasionally ornamental trees from faraway exotics were planted. And this particular tree has a lot of special meaning for me because several years ago I decided to write a novel about trees. So trees are some of the main characters in it. And there are two parts of the story. One is about apple trees and one is about redwoods and sequoias. So I used to come and visit this particular tree quite a lot when I was writing the book. And I'm looking up, actually I'm looking at the base. It's probably about 6 feet wide, maybe. And oh, how tall is it? It's really tall. Well, maybe 100 feet, hard to tell. And the branches are very close, very nicely arranged like a ladder. So it's actually very easy to climb, except that the lower branches aren't quite low enough to grab onto. It's like a tawny red color, and if you press the bark, it's very spongy, and there's a lot of kind of red dust comes off of it. It looks quite exotic in amongst everything, and for a long time in the 19th century, redwoods and sequoias were very considered the thing to have in a Victorian garden, so a lot of them were imported. This one, I suspect, is maybe 100 years old, so it was a little after that craze. But I really love seeing it here. It makes me feel like I'm home. Right, but I've had my walk now, and it's time for me to head back. I'm just going to make one more stop at another very special tree to me. So the last tree I've come to is in the middle of a meadow, and it's a dead tree. It's very tall, probably about 40 feet high, and it's probably pretty old. I think it's an oak, and it's completely stripped bare of all but its main branches and all of its bark. And it stands out in stark relief to all of the green around us. It's very dead. It almost looks like a sculpture. And a couple of years ago, a good friend died. And not long afterwards, I was walking in the heath, and I saw that tree, and I thought, that tree has died a long time ago, but it's not gone. A lot of trees don't die just like that. It's not like you press a button and it's gone. It remains. And I thought, that's like my friend is remaining in my memory. And there's something incredibly comforting about that. I've talked a bit today about comfort and solace, and I think that's what trees bring us, because they stand as silent witnesses. They are there for us. And I hope for you and for me, we can take comfort in that at this time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Woodland Trust Woodland Walks. Don't forget to subscribe to the series on iTunes or wherever you're listening to us, and do give us a review and a rating. And why not send us a recording of your favourite woodland walk to be included in a future podcast? Keep it to a maximum of 5 minutes, and please tell us what makes your woodland walk special. Or send us an email with details of your favourite walk and what makes it special to you. Send any audio files to podcast@woodlandtrust.org.uk. We look forward to hearing from you.